On a windswept plateau in southern Iran stands a small stone cabin with a gabled roof, no gold, no inscriptions, no towering monument, 6 stone steps, and a modest chamber. This is the tomb of Cyrus the Great, the man who conquered more of the known world than anyone before him, founder of the largest empire humanity had ever seen. He could have been buried in a palace of marble and lapis lazuli. He chose this, a stone hut in the middle of nowhere. That choice shaped everything that came after. Cyrus II rose from the highlands of Persia, a rocky, arid region in what is now southwestern Iran. In 2 decades, he built something unprecedented. He defeated the Medes in 550 BCE, absorbing their empire. He conquered Lydia in 546, seizing the legendary wealth of King Croesus. In 539, he took Babylon, the greatest city on earth, without a siege. He campaigned east into Central Asia, pushing Persian control toward the borders of India. By his death in 530 BCE, Cyrus ruled from the Aegean Sea to the Hindu Kush, the largest empire the world had ever known. And then came the moment that defined Persian civilization. Cyrus's fellow Persians made a reasonable proposal: relocate to the rich, fertile plains they conquered, Mesopotamia, the lowlands of Babylon. They now owned the most productive farmland on earth. There seemed no reason to stay in the harsh highlands. Cyrus refused. He pointed to a pattern in history. The Akkadian Empire, born in the Fertile Crescent, masters of Mesopotamia, grew comfortable and collapsed. The Babylonians rose in those same rich lowlands. They too grew comfortable and collapsed. The Assyrians built the most feared military machine the ancient world had ever seen, centered on the lush Tigris Valley. They collapsed. Cyrus drew the lesson. Every empire that settled into the east of the lowlands softened. Every generation grew less disciplined than the last. The very wealth that sustained these empires consumed them from within. So Cyrus framed the choice in the sharpest terms. His admonition: rough country breeds hard men, soft lands breed soft men. The same soil cannot produce both wonderful crops and men who are good soldiers. The Persians would stay in Persia. They would rule the world from the highlands, enduring cold winters, rocky terrain, and sparse harvests. They would keep the very hardness that made their conquests possible. Staying in a harsh land did not mean living without beauty. In Persia, Cyrus built his capital, Pasargadae. It looked nothing like any capital before it. No massive defensive walls, no dense urban core. Instead, small stone palaces stood scattered across a vast landscaped park. The Persians called this a paradisos, a cultivated enclosure with planted trees, flowing water channels, grasslands, and animals, all tended by workers within its walls. The garden came first, the buildings came second. This was the world's first great designed landscape, and the origin of a word still spoken by billions. Paradisos became Pardes in Hebrew, it became Paradisos in Greek, and from there, our word paradise. In the book of Genesis, God places Adam in a paradisos, a garden, to work it and attend it. The Hebrew text uses the word Pardes, borrowed directly from Persian. This was no coincidence. Persian kings styled themselves as gardeners of their realm, cultivators, not destroyers, makers of things that grow. Cyrus's tomb, standing at the edge of his paradisos, embodied this ethos perfectly: cultivation over ostentation, discipline over display. Empires don't stop when their founders die. After Cyrus, his son Cambyses conquered Egypt. Then Darius I pushed east to the Indus Valley and west into Thrace and Macedonia. The empire now stretched from Libya to India, from the steppes of Central Asia to the cataracts of the Nile. Governing this supercontinent required an administrative capital, and Darius chose Susa, an ancient city on the lowland plains, connected to the empire by a vast royal road network. But this created a philosophical tension. Susa was exactly the kind of lowland sea Cyrus had warned against. The Persians needed something else, a place that honored their founder's highland vision while reflecting the scale of what they'd built. The answer rose from the mountains of Persia itself. Darius began construction of a new complex the Persians called Persa, City of the Persians. The Greeks would later name it Persepolis. This was not an administrative center. No bureaucracy operated here. No decrees issued from its halls. Persepolis was a ceremonial and spiritual stage built to embody the empire's identity in stone, and the entire empire built it. Ionian Greek stonemasons traveled nearly 2,000 miles from the Aegean coast. Phoenician merchants shipped cedar of Lebanon for the roof beams. Lydian artisans crossed Anatolia to carve the decorative elements. The architecture stunned the ancient world. Massive columns, 70 feet tall, rose in vast audience halls, each crowned with sculpted pairs of bulls yoked back to back, stylized lion capitals, double-headed griffins. Nothing like this had ever existed. But the most revealing feature of Persepolis was carved into its staircases and walls. Stone reliefs depicting the annual Nowruz procession, the Persian New Year, when delegations from every corner of the empire brought tribute to the great king. Study these carvings. Median officials walk in rounded hats and trousers, leading subject peoples by the hand. They carry flowers, not weapons. Between each group stand small stylized trees. Ionian Greeks appear in flowing garments bearing bolts of fine wool cloth. Armenians lead horses. Bactrians bring camels. Babylonians carry golden vessels. 23 distinct delegations, each rendered with precise ethnographic detail, all ascending stone staircases, all converging on the throne. Notice was absent. No scenes of battle, no conquered peoples in chains, no burning cities. This empire chose to depict itself not as a war machine, but as a garden. Diverse peoples, carefully tended, all contributing to a cultivated order. Pull the thread from beginning to end. Cyrus's refusal to leave the highlands was not military strategy alone. It was a founding philosophy, a conviction that greatness requires hardship. The Paradisos at Pasargadae gave it first expression. Empire as garden, king as gardener. Persepolis gave it grandest expression. The entire known world rendered in stone, walking in procession through a cultivated landscape toward a single unifying center. 23 nations, flowers in hand, trees standing between the delegations, all ascending toward the king who tended them. The word paradise, which billions of people still speak in dozens of languages, comes from this Persian vision. A cultivated enclosure in a harsh land, order drawn from wildness, beauty born from discipline. Cyrus's tomb still stands on that windswept plateau. The man who built the world's greatest empire chose to rest in the hardest place he could find, and in doing so, he gave us the idea of paradise.